Chanakya has lived for centuries as a teacher, strategist, and political survivor, but the reason his name still matters is simple: he understood that power is never only force. It is also timing, memory, and control of the story people believe. The world he entered was unstable. North India was full of kingdoms, competing courts, border pressure, and the constant possibility that a ruler could disappear overnight if the political ground shifted beneath him. TAXILA, where Chanakya taught and learned, sits at the edge of empire and exchange. It was the kind of place where ideas, merchants, soldiers, and envoys all crossed paths, which is exactly where a political thinker would sharpen his instincts. He was not just an academic. He watched systems. He noticed how courts functioned, how alliances formed, how leaders failed, and how quickly a confident king could become a cautionary tale. That habit of observation turned into strategy. Chanakya came to believe that a state survives when it understands its enemies, its economy, its terrain, and its internal weaknesses at the same time. The story became personal when he was insulted at court. That moment matters because the classics often begin in humiliation. Great political stories are frequently born from a wound that refuses to stay private. Chanakya's reaction was not a burst of emotion. It was a pivot. He left the court and turned grievance into a long project, which is one reason the story feels so modern and so unsettling. Out of that project came Chandragupta Maurya, the young ruler who would become the vehicle for a larger vision. In political history, a mentor can matter as much as a monarch if he knows how to shape the field around him. The Mauryan rise was not only military. It was logistical. Roads, spies, taxes, alliances, supplies, and discipline all had to work together, because empires are built in the boring places long before they are celebrated in the exciting ones. Chanakya's reputation comes from that systems thinking. He saw that kingdoms fail not just from outside attack but from weak administration, waste, factionalism, and rulers who confuse image for actual control. His political treatise, the Arthashastra, became famous because it treats the state like a living machine. It discusses finance, intelligence, punishment, diplomacy, and the practical realities of governing a large and difficult territory. That text still feels sharp because it refuses fantasy. It assumes people will lie, bargain, hide, defect, and compete, and it asks how a ruler can stay effective inside that reality. This is where Chanakya becomes more than a historical advisor. He becomes a mirror for every age that wants to know how much morality can survive inside government, and how much power can survive without calculation. The Mauryan Empire that followed changed the scale of Indian politics. Unified territory, stronger institutions, and wider reach meant that ideas about rule could now travel farther than before. Pataliputra became a center where administration, armies, and commerce met. A capital city is not just a seat of power. It is where power gets organized into routines, offices, and habits. The genius of the story is that it combines intellect and force. Chanakya does not reject power because it is dangerous. He tries to discipline it, which is a much harder and more relevant task. That discipline also has a darker edge. Chanakya is remembered as ruthless, and not without reason. He is the kind of figure who reminds us that statecraft often asks for choices that are hard to admire from a safe distance. But history does not reward softness by itself. It rewards outcomes, and that is why Chanakya is still studied. He understood that institutions outlast personalities when they are built with care and pressure. The story has a human side too. Advisors live in the shadow of kings, and the shadow can be lonely. They are credited for success and blamed for failure, often at the same time. That loneliness may be part of Chanakya's legend. The teacher who understands the mechanics of rule is rarely the one invited to enjoy its comfort, because comfort and control usually pull in different directions. His legacy also belongs to the history of Indian political thought. Long after his time, readers used him to think through diplomacy, espionage, taxation, and the moral cost of securing order. That makes Chanakya useful even now. If you want to understand how states justify themselves, you eventually meet the same questions he asked: what should a ruler know, who should be trusted, and what should never be left to chance. The best way to read him is not as a cartoon villain or saint, but as a person who accepted that politics is a contest over survival before it is anything else. He also helps explain why empires endure. Not because they are kind, and not because they are always wise, but because someone somewhere has made the invisible machinery keep moving one more day. The Mauryan story that Chanakya helped launch also changed cultural memory. Later generations could point to him when they wanted to talk about duty, realism, ambition, and the architecture of rule. That is why the story lasts. Chanakya is not just a clever man in the past. He is an argument about how much a civilization must understand about itself if it wants to remain coherent. And the argument is still alive because every era has rulers, rivals, and advisors, even if the tools change. A palace becomes a cabinet room, a spy becomes a data point, and a tax ledger becomes a spreadsheet. One reason Chanakya still fascinates viewers is that his world feels like a prototype for modern influence. Information has value, reputation has value, and people who can move unseen often shape events before a public speech ever begins. That is why the Arthashastra keeps returning in political debates. Some readers treat it as a manual of power, others as a warning label, but everyone agrees that it exposes how closely governance and pressure are tied together. Chanakya also survives because he belongs to memory as much as history. His name stands for calculation, resilience, and the uneasy truth that the people who design systems are not always the people who get to enjoy them. That is why the surviving text should be read as political thought rather than as a personal diary. It preserves problems that states repeatedly face, even when the author and date remain debated. That tension gives the story its ending. Chanakya is remembered as an advisor who helped build a durable state, but the Arthashastra's world is broader than one biography. It measures grain, labor, roads, intelligence, taxation, punishment, and public order because power depends on ordinary systems working repeatedly. The text does not ask us to celebrate every method it describes. Its value is the uncomfortable question beneath the strategy: can a state built on calculation still claim a moral purpose? The Arthashastra is a layered political text, not a perfect transcript of one man's thought. Its surviving form discusses taxation, intelligence, diplomacy, punishment, roads, grain, and public order, while later biographies turn Chanakya into a perfectly coordinated mastermind. The Mauryan state is documented through archaeology, inscriptions, foreign accounts, and later memory, but his exact role remains partly reconstructed. That uncertainty is useful. It shows how a historical advisor became a symbol for a wider tradition of political realism. Chanakya's enduring question is practical and uncomfortable: who controls information, how is security paid for, and when does calculation become coercion?